Hi, my name is Pat Martin, and this is yet another Dex demo. Uh, don't I just have a rough plan of what I want to do, so I'm just kind of playing it by ear here, kind of flying by the seat of my pants. But first thing I think I want to do is import a CSV like we did in previous demo, and in this case, I'm going to pull up the president data, and again, I'm going to view the data. Make sure it looks good because you never know what's going on in my file system here, and looks like the data is pretty good. So what we have here is the first president, second, third, fourth, all the way down to Barack Obama, the 44th president. And next column is the name of the president, the party, the home state. So we got a data set. So let's take a look at it in the various ways that we can visualize this inside of Dex. So start off with a simple dendrogram, which is really just a fancy way of saying tree in Greek. And when I click the dendrogram, we can see the configuration window over here, and we can give it the width, the height, the left and top margin, and then the name of it. So we can call it presidential. Don't know how to spell that. Dendrogram. Alright, so I'm going to click the HTML tab, which shows the output in HTML, and click execute, and then we can see the dendrogram, and we can click an output tab over here. We can see exactly the HTML content that was generated, and if we choose to, we can save this to something like let's call it pres.html. And then we can load a browser like Firefox. And let me do that real quick and jump to that. And we can actually look at the data. Let's see, what did I call that? I think I need to reload this. President dendrogram, I think I just called it. Let me look here. Last modified. There it is, presden. Okay, so we can select that, and any of this content can be externalized as HTML that you can view with or without a web server, and it's pretty convenient. So it has no external dependencies and no web server dependencies. So that's a pretty nice feature. So go back over here, and we can play around with some of the settings here. Maybe you want to change the height of this to 1600. And go ahead and click execute and just resize the dendrogram. So you can really play with it, you can have fun, and let's move on to another visualization. So haven't really covered the basic navigation within the UI, but I guess I'll cover it as I do it myself. So I select the dendrogram, and I have choices here. I can choose to disable it, in which case it'll go gray on me, and when I execute the flow, it won't be part of the flow. It'll just be skipped instead. Or I can just well, I'll just leave it disabled. I could click delete, and I'll delete it and delete that, and it's gone forever. But I kind of like it, so I'm going to drag it back here, and I'll just keep it here disabled. Maybe I'll rename it to Pres. And then move on to the next visualization, which is the D3 force visualization. So one cool thing is all the D3 visualizations are on a framework called data-driven documents, and it's by Mike Bostock, and it's really fabulous framework for being able to visualize all this type of data. So next is we're going to take the same data. We're going to feed it into the force diagram. Go to the HTML and click execute, and we can see that all the little spring connected components are kind of floating around the screen trying to figure out a place to rest. Or we can pull these guys, and we can wreak havoc here. We can go back here. We can reset the dimensions of this to whatever we want it to be. And not sure what that is, but click execute again, and we see that we now have a bigger palette that this stuff exists on. Now, this is fun and great, but maybe this isn't the best way to represent this particular data. But that's okay, because we're exploring the data, hence the name Dex. So we'll get rid of the force diagram, and I guess we'll get rid of the dendrogram too. No reason to have it around. Let's see. Next is a rough view called Hive Plot. I've still got some work to do on this guy. Include change some of the defaults, but I'm going to show you everything, warts and all. Excuse me. And click execute here, and we can see that the Hive Plot is pretty good for showing relationships, though I've still got to work out some of the kinks of how it shows those relationships. So that's just sort of a sneak preview of a view I'm looking into. Indented tree is actually pretty useful. Click execute again, and you can actually, expand or compress. Is that the right word? Collapse or make them all go together. I'm not sure what the right word is, but anyway, it's a pretty good way to be able to dig into hierarchical data, whatever data you're interested in. So next view, and really the next one, the partition layout, is really just a variation of the indented tree, only it lays it out a little bit differently. So you could definitely think of things that the partition layout may be great for, like maybe showing disk usage on a hard drive, or maybe where execution time and some sort of application might have been spent. So I haven't really done a good job of ordering the data, but oh well. You can click on these entries and then it'll zoom in or zoom out based on what you want to see. That one's kind of boring, but okay. Next one is the packed circles. Still got some work to do on this guy too, as you can see, but the intent is that I'm going to get this view into a state where you can see relationships in Venn diagram form. So a little bit rough right now, but we'll work through some of those issues as we evolve the software product. Next is the radio cluster, and click execute there, and maybe a little too much data for this particular module. And again, I don't have the 3 tabs in place on this particular task yet to where we can configure all the aspects of the drawing, but it's a pretty good way to visualize a lot of data that has specific relationships. And let's see, next is one that I really like a lot. But so far no one else likes it quite as much as me yet, so I don't quite get it. I think it's a great way to represent a ton of data at one time, but I'm going to change the dimensions to 1000 and change the height over to 800, and we'll call this Presidents. Not really sure. In this case, I need to hit hit execute because we haven't populated any of the relationships in the pull down yet. So I'm going to hit execute, and now I should be able to click, and I'm going to figure out what relationships I want to show here. So I need to do a better job of labeling this, but this is the source relationship, the target, and then a numerical value that you want them connected by. So maybe maybe this isn't the best data set for this, but I'm shooting from the hip. So we'll pick president, and we'll map it over to party, and I guess the only numerical value we have is presidency number. That really doesn't make sense, but oh well. We'll deal with it for now. And then I'm going to go to the HTML view, and we can see the relationships. Looks like George Washington was the first, so he had a very, very small connection. So over here, Barack Obama, 44th president, so he has a very thick connection. But let's change this into something that makes a little more sense. So we're going to add another column here. So I'm going to add a column. I'm going to drag this up here before the sand key. And I'll just call this num something, doesn't really matter, just set it to 1. And then I want to check my work here, so I'm going to drag a view data element here and hit execute, and we see that we have a constant element called num. So now I want to go over here. Now I have the choice of num, so that'll weight every connection the same. So that way when I go here and I hit execute, everybody should have roughly the same weight. So we get a relative idea of how many Republican presidents we've had, how many Democrats, how many whatever Democrat / Republican is. Not really sure. So the browser inside of Dex is a little bit limited too. So let me show you one of the ways it's limited. So I'm going to save the output here, and we'll call it pres Sankey. And then I'm going to load the Mozilla browser. Just go back here, reload that. And you can see I've been busy with a lot of other views too. And let me open this to the right size. Now, one of the things that's nice about Sankey is that it'll highlight, not in the internal Dex browser, but when you externalize it to a full-featured browser like Mozilla, you can hover over it, it'll highlight it, and then you can see relationships. Andrew Jackson was a Democrat, with, in this case, a weight of 1. Dataset isn't 100% great for the Sankey, but I hope that you can at least see some of the value that I see in this particular view. Now, another cool thing is let's add a relationship. Let's add a relationship from party to home state. And again, we're just going to use a default weight of 1. And then I'm going to hit execute again. And now we can see we have relationships that are connected. So we're showing multi-layer relationship, I think I'm trying to say. So let me save this output again. And let's see, pres Sankey. And I'm going to call this pres Sankey 2. Go over here and let's take a look at that particular view here. And again, we can see the layers and multi-relationship. So love this view, but that's probably enough to say about it. Alright, next is Starburst. Now this guy is just going to create a Starburst, and maybe a little too much data for it, but that's okay. So and over here we get the president number, and you know that really isn't that important. So how about we do this? How about we go here and we're going to delete a column, and I'm going to disable this because we don't need that anymore. And let's see, that is called presidency. So I'm going to go over here and I'm going to delete it, and I'm going to re-execute it. And now we see one of those relationships is gone, and we start out with the name of the president on the inner wheel, followed by their party, followed by the state they're from. So that's about what we wanted. So now we can click a particular president, Calvin Coolidge, Republican from Massachusetts. That's great. So next view is, tell you what, let's call that enough for now. So I'm going to divide this into a visual 2, and then we'll go through some of the other views. I need to rethink about whether this is the best data to showcase some of the other views, and that's probably enough anyways for now. Anyway, thank you for listening, and that's it for now. Bye.